actually a mental health nurse as well, and I work for the NHS, and I agree with a lot of what you've said about alienation being a factor. I think you could probably join the dots even more directly and just sum it up as capitalism, because if we look at absolute and relative poverty, that's often underlying a lot of mental health issues. You go into all of that. But that's a global issue and not just an issue in the UK. So if we think about capitalism, and if we're to stop growth, which you were saying would be one of the responses, then surely we would want to say we actually need to redistribute growth. And does that have to be a zero-sum game? Because if we look at the global south, we would want their standard of living and their growth to increase, and they're often disproportionately affected by climate change. So how do we share out those resources and allow massive growth in some parts of the world while stopping overall economic growth globally to prevent further disruption of climate?
Thank you. Another great question. No, of course, you're absolutely right. I mean, the colonized parts of the world, which have been deprived of their own wealth by imperialism, imperialism that continues today under the name of trade, have huge populations whose basic living standards are not met. And this is where I think donut economics is so useful, because what Kate Raworth does is to visualize the way in which we can meet basic living standards without exceeding planetary boundaries. And that is the donut. The basic living standards are the hole into which you don't want to fall. Below that standard, the outside ring is the planetary boundaries that you don't want to breach. Now, I think the weakness of the book, and I'm sure she would see this herself, is turning that into actual concrete prescriptions for economic policy. And there's still a huge amount of work to be done with this, on this. But I agree that there needs to be equitable growth in the poorest parts of the world, whereas we actually need degrowth in the richest parts of the world. And in order to do that, you do need a completely different economic system. Because at the moment, the poorest parts of the world are told, well, your means of growing is to trade with us in the rich world. Now already, that trade has managed to deprive the poorest parts of the world of their resources, of their labor, of their land, of their soil, of their water. It's been devastating to many parts of the world in either the short immediate term or in the long run, when environmental crisis becomes ever more urgent. And it's always the poor who do get hit get hit most. So there's going to have to be, I think, less global trade if there's going to be any chance of more equitable development, not least because the rich nations manage unequally to capture the great majority of the benefits of global trade. But there will have to be sort of regional and national trade to allow poorer nations to be able to raise people above that crucial basic floor of need. Now, I don't have all the answers either, and I'm not sure anyone yet has all the answers for what those economies might look like. But there are some brilliant examples being developed around the world. Examples of how you increase people's wealth on the land while keeping the soil on the land. Examples of how you actually increase people's prosperity at the same time as restoring ecosystems, and often the two things are essential. A very good example is looking at fisheries, for example. Now, at the moment, European boats go down to West Africa and ransack people's fisheries, all in the name of trade. And we're told, oh, well, this is enriching people because, look, we'll pay some docking rights and fish processing and the rest of it. What it's doing is starving people. People should be able to take back control of their fisheries, create marine reserves where fish can breed and grow to large sizes once more, and then you get this spillover effect into the surrounding waters, and you gradually increase natural wealth and increase people's levels of subsistence. These aren't in any way whole answers, but what I can say is that the current way of doing things is going to meet neither need. it's neither going to protect us from environmental breakdown, nor is it going to ensure that the people who have been so cruelly deprived of their subsistence today have their basic needs met.